The parking lot was already packed when I pulled in. Rows of pastel sedans shimmered under the soft April sun, each one a rolling testament to Southern tradition. Inside the copper magnolia, the chandeliers sparkled like wedding rings, and the air smelled like citrus and dry champagne. It was the kind of place that hosted charity auctions and society weddings, not necessarily where I thought I'd be on a Saturday, but it was my parents' 40th anniversary. I told myself I had to show up, for them, for the principal. I adjusted my jacket in the rearview mirror, took a breath, and reminded myself, keep it classy, no matter what. The hostess stand stood tall and trimmed in florals. A teenager with too much blush and not enough authority asked me my name. Tate? Maylis Tate, I said, clear and calm. She flipped through a clipboard, frowned. I don't see you here. I spelled it again. She still didn't find it. Her lips curled apologetically as she reached under the counter and pulled out a generic name tag labeled Guest. That was my first hint. I clipped it to my lapel without flinching. It was petty, sure, but something about that missing name burned a little deeper than it should have. I told myself not to care, but I knew I did. The banquet hall glowed with soft pink uplighting, round tables adorned with gold-edged place settings and floral centerpieces that smelled too perfectly arranged to be real. A saxophonist played something jazzy in the background, and servers in crisp black vests circled the room with champagne flutes. I scanned for familiar faces, an uncle here, a neighbor there, then followed the hostess toward my table. We passed clusters of people I recognized, tables with my cousins, childhood friends, even our church's new associate pastor. I smiled at a few, received half-hearted nods in return, and then she stopped, right by the hallway to the restrooms. Here we are, she chirped, pulling out a chair. I blinked. The table was shoved against the wall, half blocked by a service tray station. My seat faced the bathroom entrance. On my left sat a man I vaguely remembered from my cousin's wedding. Her boyfriend, maybe. Across from me, a woman I used to see at Sunday school, back when I still went. The fourth seat was occupied by a young assistant to our pastor, who seemed too engrossed in her phone to acknowledge my hello. The server accidentally bumped my chair twice while delivering water. I took a sip and bit the inside of my cheek. Across the room, Astria glowed in a butter-yellow dress. She stood at the center of everything, laughing easily, holding a glass of wine, posing with our parents for photo after photo. Her hair was curled just right, her heels clicked with confidence. A guest handed her a bouquet, and Mom beamed like she'd just won something. I raised my glass too, but to no one in particular. The room burst into applause as a slideshow started playing on the massive screen near the podium. Pictures flicked by, Dad grilling burgers, Mom blowing out candles, Astria posing at prom, on vacation, in cap and gown. I counted 2 photos with me in them. In both, I was at the edge of the frame, one shoulder cut off in one, half my face obscured in the other. I forced a small smile. This wasn't new, but it felt heavier tonight, more permanent. From somewhere behind me, I caught a whisper. Who's she again? She looks familiar, but not sure. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I sat still as the next round of applause rang out. I didn't clap. I didn't drink. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, typed 6 words. You are not invisible. You're just not convenient. Then I locked the screen, placed the phone back in my clutch, and waited for whatever came next. I hadn't even finished the water in my glass when I noticed my mother moving toward the podium. She didn't rush. No one ever rushes Seraphine Vale. She moved with that deliberate grace she used to teach me as a child. Chin high, steps slow, but sure, like every inch of the floor belonged to her. She held a wine glass in one hand and a folded napkin in the other, dabbing at non-existent moisture before setting it down on the edge of the podium. The chatter softened. Someone nudged the sound guy, and the music faded. I watched as she looked out over the guests like a preacher about to start revival. Thank you all, she said, her voice warm and sugary, for being here to celebrate 40 years of love, faith, and family. Polite applause rippled through the room. I sat up slightly straighter. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she'd say something kind, something simple. A nod, even, just to acknowledge I was part of this. She turned toward Astria and smiled. We've been blessed in so many ways. But tonight, I want to take a moment to honor the daughter who's always loved us, who's always been there, through everything. My stomach tensed. I gripped the base of my glass. She's been our rock, our light, our joy. People turned their heads toward Astria, who gave a shy wave and lowered her gaze like a starlet who'd just won an award. My mother raised her glass. This is the daughter who's always loved us. She paused, long enough to let the words settle. Then she added, more pointedly, more loudly, as if making sure no one misunderstood. The other one? She's never lifted a finger. The room didn't fall silent, not completely. There was a cough, a few murmurs, an awkward chuckle near the back. Someone tried to clap, maybe out of habit, maybe out of confusion, but the sound died quickly. I didn't look around. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift. People glancing at me, then away. The air got thick. My ears rang. My mother took a slow sip, set her glass down, and smiled like she'd just put the final bow on a perfect speech. Then came Astria's moment. She stepped forward, carefully holding a large frame wrapped in gold ribbon. "Mom, Dad," she said sweetly, "I wanted to give you something special, something to remember all the good times." She removed the ribbon, pulled back the tissue paper, and revealed a collage, an elaborate montage of memories. Birthdays, holidays, random Sunday mornings, my parents at the lake, Astria at prom, a vacation in Charleston. I wasn't in a single picture, not in the corners, not cropped, not anywhere. I watched my mother clutch the frame to her chest like a sacred object. Dad nodded approvingly. People leaned in, cooing over the thoughtfulness, the sentiment, the detail. I didn't cry. I didn't breathe for a few seconds, but I didn't cry. What I felt wasn't new, but it was clearer than it had ever been. 9 years. 9 years of helping behind the scenes. I'd covered their mortgage twice, paid off their credit card after Dad's surgery, sent cash when Astria said her car broke down in Atlanta, picked up groceries on the sly, paid the late water bill when Mom said she'd just been distracted, never once asked for thanks, never expected a plaque, but I never expected to be rewritten either. They didn't forget me, I thought. They deleted me. I stood, quietly. No drama, no scraping of chairs or shattered glass. I placed my napkin on the table, adjusted my clutch strap, and walked toward the exit. Cousins looked up and away. One of my aunts mouthed something I couldn't read. A few people parted as I passed. Astria caught my eye for half a second, but didn't stop me. Of course she didn't. The front door swung open with a dull creak. Outside, the evening was soft, a humid breeze brushing my arms as I walked to the car. 2 hours later, I was still driving. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence helped. I went over the list in my head, not just the usual heartbreak inventory. This time, I counted the exact amount I'd sent for tuition, the months I'd paid their gas bill, the time I canceled my trip to pay for Dad's root canal. The summer Astria lost her job, and I covered the grocery deliveries, line by line, like a ledger. I'd poured years into a family that never saw me as anything more than backup. Or maybe they didn't see me at all. The porch light was still on when I pulled into my driveway. A small bulb I'd bought on sale because I'd spent the better money making sure theirs stayed running. I cut the engine, exhaled. My phone buzzed. Then again, 38 missed calls. And counting. I didn't answer a single call. Not the first, not the 38th, not even the one from my father, which came in just past midnight, as if a late hour might loosen my resolve. I wanted to see what they'd say when I gave them nothing. No explanation, no anger, just absence. The next morning, my phone screen was a battlefield. Missed calls, voicemails, messages, most of them in that half-polite, half-guilting tone that only family can master. "We're worried. Please come back. Let's talk." Not a single one said, "I'm sorry." I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen. I brewed coffee the way I liked it. Dark, unflavored, strong enough to startle my bones, and let the silence fill the apartment like a second skin. There was something liberating about not explaining myself. I didn't owe anyone an emotional progress report. Still, memory has its own voice. In my mind, I replayed that damn slideshow. Not just the photos, but the canvas print they displayed at the banquet entrance, a giant family photo mounted like art. Everyone in the picture had been included. Everyone except me. The worst part? I remembered taking that photo. I remembered standing behind the camera while Mom adjusted her necklace, Dad smoothed his shirt, and Astria insisted the lighting be soft and warm. They'd smiled for me, then hung the photo without me. That image wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I walked back to my desk, opened my old folders, and clicked through the digital ghosts of the past few years. Receipts, transfer confirmations, PayPal records, grocery deliveries to their address, monthly contributions for just until things get stable again. They'd told me I was helping, that I was part of keeping the family together. Turns out I was just their favorite utility. I paused at a bank statement from 4 years ago. I'd sent Astria $1,250 to help with rent. 11 months in a row. She'd been between jobs, or so she said. I canceled a trip that year, a getaway to Denver I'd saved for 6 months, because she called crying about an overdue notice. I never told anyone, didn't even remind her later. Not a single photo in that collage showed anything but her smiling in someone else's backyard. And then I remembered something worse. 3 years ago, after Sunday service, Mom pulled me aside in the fellowship hall. She leaned in close and said, "Don't mention you helped with the ER bill, sweetheart. It would embarrass your sister." That moment, which I'd buried under layers of understanding and maturity, now came back with sharp edges. They hadn't just left me out. They trained me to step back, to make myself small, to stay useful but invisible. I stared at the fridge. My fridge. Still covered in post-it notes tracking payment cycles, reminders to send money for the heating bill, the dental copay, the annual termite treatment. None of those sticky notes bore names, but I knew whose balance they tracked. I tore them down, one by one. Was I always the ghost in their story, or did I let myself become one? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop, not to write a message, not to draft a rant or a demand for credit. I began building a file, a digital ledger of everything I'd given, not to weaponize it, but to remember, to reclaim the memory before they edited me out again. Receipts, emails, screenshots, one folder at a time. I labeled each by year, no dramatic titles, just dates and proof. As I clicked through folders, another notification popped up. An email from Astria. Subject line, "Let's talk, but keep it private." I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the inbox and opened my banking dashboard. It was time to start making changes I should have made years ago. Instead of screaming into the void, I clicked open my banking dashboard. I didn't even flinch. I just started disconnecting. Mortgage contribution, gone. Monthly auto draft for their electricity bill, canceled. Emergency card they used when just a little short this month, disabled. One by one, I severed the silent lines that had tied me to their comfort for nearly a decade. They said I'd never lifted a finger, so I decided not to. By the time I closed my laptop, it was nearing noon. I threw on a jacket and headed to the local market for groceries. I needed milk, bread, something ordinary, something grounding. I hadn't even made it past the produce aisle before I heard my name. Malis? Hey, wow, you look good. It was Mrs. Carlston from 2 streets over. Her smile was thin, polite. Behind her, another woman, a PTA mom from my niece's old school, gave a subtle wave and quickly turned away. They exchanged a glance I wasn't meant to see. And then, just as I reached for a basket of apples, I heard it, 2 aisles over, spoken just low enough for gossip to hide behind convenience. I heard she just walked out. No explanation, total drama. That hit harder than the wine glass toast. That meant my parents weren't just ignoring what they did, they were reframing it, reshaping the narrative to make me look like the unstable one. Of course. I left without making a scene, and somehow, the silence still became ammunition. I bought my groceries and left without making eye contact. Later that evening, I was folding laundry when I heard my aunt's voice through the living room speakerphone. My mom had accidentally left the line open during a family group call. I wasn't meant to hear it, but I did. "She's always been like that," my aunt said. "Cold, distant. Astria at least has heart. That girl just disappears." And then Mom's voice, low but clear. "She takes things too personally." I froze. The basket of clothes sagged in my arms. They'd been planting this version of me for years. Distant, cold, hard to love, but I remembered every phone call at midnight when they needed help, every drive out of town to drop off groceries, every dollar wired just until we get through this month. And I remembered what Mom said at church 3 years ago when someone asked about Dad's hospital bill. I'd paid it, but she told me not to say a word. "It would embarrass your sister," she whispered. "Not thank you. Not let's share this as a family. Just stay quiet. Stay convenient. Stay hidden." That night, I drove back to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead, didn't announce myself. I needed one of my old tax documents, something I'd left in their home office years ago when I was still handling their files. The garage door was open when I pulled in. I walked inside like I still belonged there, which, technically, I didn't. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring a pot. She didn't hear me at first. I went straight to the hallway closet where they kept old files. The drawer stuck for a second before sliding open, and that's when it happened. My nephew, 8 and wild as ever, came barreling around the corner and slammed into the open drawer. A folder tumbled out and spilled onto the hardwood. Receipts, so many of them. Bank transfers with my name on them. Grocery orders, checks written from my account for holiday dinners, even the birthday card I sent 2 years ago, with the check still inside it, uncashed but preserved, like a keepsake. I knelt down slowly, gathering the papers. My mom finally stepped into the hallway, pausing mid-sentence when she saw me holding them. Her face didn't twist in guilt. It didn't even shift. "You kept these," I said, voice low. "All this time. You kept the proof." She opened her mouth, closed it. "I didn't know you were keeping score," I said. Her eyebrows twitched. "I wasn't, because I never was." I stood up, left the rest of the folder on the shelf. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't raise my voice, but I knew she'd heard it. Back home, I dug out my own folders, every document I'd ever backed up. Tax years, tuition slips, Venmo screenshots. I wasn't compiling a scrapbook. I wasn't even seeking closure. I was preparing for war. It didn't take long to finish. Once I started untying the financial knots, the whole web unraveled faster than I expected. Mortgage support, deleted. Automatic grocery funds, gone. Gas card they used just for emergencies, frozen. I didn't send a warning. No farewell texts, no clever one-liners. Just the click of a mouse and the sound of boundaries finally finding shape. They used my silence like a wallet. Today, that silence closed. I sat at my desk afterward, the morning sun bleeding through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the folders I'd just labeled by year. It wasn't a battle plan, not yet, but it was the first act of something definitive. I grabbed my keys, needing air. I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved much since the night I walked out of that banquet. The road to their house was familiar, muscle memory more than intention. I told myself I was just dropping off old tax documents they might need for the accountant. It wasn't about seeing them. But maybe a part of me needed to. Their car wasn't in the driveway. I let myself in through the side door, as I had for years. The house smelled like old roses and reheated soup. On my way out, something caught my eye. A splash of purple behind the trash bin near the back door. It was the orchid, the one I'd sent Mom a few days before the party. White pot. Deep violet petals. It wasn't cheap. I'd picked it from a specialty florist who imported them from Hawaii. It was meant to be quiet and elegant, something that spoke for me without needing words. Now it sat half dead, leaves wilted, soil dry, shoved next to an empty box of cleaning supplies. No card, no water, no sign it had ever mattered. I stared at it, then bent down and picked it up by the base. The ceramic was warm from sitting near the vent, and when I tilted it, dry soil crumbled onto the tile. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I walked it out to my car and set it in the passenger seat like a passenger who'd overstayed their welcome. They gave it the exact place they'd always given me, present but unwatered. Not dead, just unacknowledged. Back home, I opened my phone and unsubscribed from the family's shared calendar. No more alerts for Dad's cardiology checkup or Mom's prescription refill. I logged out of the shared Amazon Prime. Deleted the grocery list app we all used. Each action felt lighter than the last. Then I found the last one, buried in the medical records folder. Emergency contact, Malis Tate. I changed it, removed my phone number, updated the insurance settings. No one needed to call me when they needed a signature at the hospital anymore. That night, I poured a glass of wine. Not celebration, not mourning, just stillness. The voicemail came around 9:30 p.m. It was from my father. 6 words. Your mother is asking about the orchid. He didn't say anything else. No introduction, no follow-up. I didn't call back, but I knew then they were starting to feel the quiet. I didn't reply, but I could feel it beginning, the slow unraveling. 2 days passed, then came the brunch. Every Sunday, like clockwork, Mom and Dad joined the church board for brunch at Clover Cane, a place with overpriced omelets and a waiting list for the best corner table. They showed up like royalty, ready for biscuits and small talk. But this time, when the check came and Dad handed over the family joint card, the server returned with an apologetic frown. Sorry, sir. It looks like this one didn't go through. Dad blinked. Try again. She did. Twice. Same result. Mom's smile cracked but stayed fixed. Just use mine, honey, she said through her teeth. She pulled out her backup card and handed it over like a Band-Aid. No one said anything, but everyone noticed. Later that afternoon, Dad swung by to pick up his cholesterol meds. The pharmacist, someone he'd known since high school, lowered her voice and said, You might want to check with your bank, Mr. Vale. That card bounced. By dinner, I'd already heard through 2 different channels that my exit had become the talking point of the week. It was the kind of gossip that got a polite shake of the head and a bless her heart, followed by a long pause of judgment. That evening, my phone buzzed with a new email from Mom. Subject line, A beautiful night. She had CC'd the entire extended family. It was a public thank you for the anniversary party. Paragraphs of gratitude. She mentioned Astria twice, praised the event planner, thanked the florist by name, even added a line about the teenager who helped guests park. My name wasn't there, not even a footnote, not even a passive mention. I read the email 3 times, then closed it and poured myself some tea. 20 minutes later, my phone chimed again. A text. From Mom. I didn't think you'd want your name on it. You've always said you didn't care about credit. I stared at the screen, then slowly typed back. That's true. But what you wrote made it look like I was never even there. She didn't respond. Later that night, Cousin Dana called. We hadn't talked in over a year. Hey, she said awkwardly. I just wanted to check in. I'm fine, I said. There was a pause. I saw the email, and the seating arrangement, and the look on your face. It felt off. It was. What's going on? They're adjusting to life without a full-time invisible assistant, I said, calmly. Dana exhaled. I always thought something was weird. I just didn't say anything. Most people didn't. After we hung up, I sat back, feeling the quiet press in again. It wasn't heavy. It was clean. That's when Astria called. Her voice was syrupy, the way it always got when she was trying to manage an image. May, she sang. We all go through things. Maybe this is just your season to rest. No pressure, no roles to play. Just relax for a while. I didn't answer. Just let her voice float there in the air, like perfume sprayed on too thick. She waited for a beat, then hung up. I opened the thank you email again, hovered over the forward button, typed 1 sentence, since we're being public about gratitude. And just before I hit send, I thought, why stop there? Just before I hit send, a thought cut through the adrenaline, one that came sharp and clear. Why stop there? I minimized the email and reopened my files, For weeks, I'd been collecting the breadcrumbs. But maybe this wasn't just about gratitude. Maybe this was about theft. It started with a stray envelope. Buried in a pile of receipts was a tax document from earlier this year, addressed to Astria at an address I didn't recognize. I skimmed it, assuming it was from one of her rentals, maybe some consulting project, but something about it tugged. The house listed. I knew it, because I helped save it. 5 years ago, our parents nearly lost it. A second property, technically their names on paper, but I'd made the payments when Dad was out of work. I'd negotiated with the bank, refinanced the terms, and wired the first 3 months to keep it from foreclosure. They'd called me a blessing, said they'd pay me back. That never happened. And now it belonged to Astria. I pulled up the county records. There it was, deed transferred 18 months ago. To her name, no discussion, no heads up, nothing. She'd taken what I paid for and stamped her name across the title like she'd built it herself. My hands tightened on the mouse, but I didn't panic. I kept digging. 2 folders down, I opened a PDF from 3 years back, wire transfers labeled tuition support. I'd sent her $18,000. She said she'd gotten into a graduate program, promised this would finally set her career on the right path, talked about student loans piling up and how 1 semester would change everything. Except, she never went. I found the LLC registration for her boutique PR firm, dated 2 weeks after the last transfer. That tuition money. It bought her a business, a brand. The same brand she now used to parade around our family as the successful daughter. The loyal one. The one who always gave so much. I stared at the screen. My stomach didn't drop. My throat didn't close. It just got quiet. Still. I picked up my phone, typed a message. Found the deed and the invoices. I'd love to hear your side, for once. I hit send. She read it. Didn't reply. I didn't need her to. Instead, I went back to the spreadsheet, added columns, property contributions, tuition assistance, interest-free loans that were never acknowledged. I linked receipts to each line. No commentary, no accusation, just timestamps and facts. This wasn't a takedown. This was accounting. By late afternoon, I had compiled 5 years of quiet giving. I titled the document, What You Forgot. I was about to close it when a pop-up interrupted me, an alert from our joint expense app. Someone was trying to access the shared account. Attempted login. Again. 3rd time. Locked. I stared at the screen and exhaled through my nose. They were scrambling now. I changed the password, then renamed the folder. You asked what I did. Here it is. The email wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was clean. Subject. You said I did nothing. This says otherwise. No body text. Just attachments. Screenshots of wire transfers, tuition confirmations, signed loan documents, receipts for home repairs, grocery deliveries, the emergency dental payment from 2017. Even the check I sent for their anniversary that they never cashed, but still deposited 6 months later. I BCC'd everyone from the party guest list, all 105 names, every single one who sat and watched my mother erase me with a smile and a champagne glass. Then I hit send. Within the hour, the first read receipt came through. Then the forward started. I watched names I hadn't thought of in years pop up in the thread. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't have to. By dinner, I had 3 voicemails. I had no idea, Melis. This changes everything. You didn't deserve that. The next night, just after dark, a familiar shadow moved across my front porch. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. My parents didn't knock. They stood there, backs straight, hands folded, like they were waiting for communion. I opened the door, stepped out, and closed it behind me. No invitation in. Mom was the first to speak. Of course she was. We were hurt, she said, her voice soft, rehearsed. You embarrassed us. I tilted my head. Did I lie? She blinked. I sent proof, I added. You called me invisible. I showed them what invisible looks like when it pays your mortgage. Dad looked down at the porch step like it might crack. I don't think you understand what that email did, Mom said. It made us look. Like what? I cut in. Ungrateful, manipulative. That wasn't the email. That was the mic. The toast. The party you planned where I was seated next to the restroom. She flinched. Astria didn't know. She's been editing me out of your lives since high school, I said. And you handed her the scissors. The silence stretched. You can't just cut us off, Mom whispered. We're still your parents. No, I said calmly. You were my parents. And then, at that podium, in front of everyone, you cut me out. I just made it official. I turned to go. Dad took a half step forward but didn't follow. They didn't say goodbye. They stood there until I closed the door. That night, I didn't pour wine or light candles. I opened my laptop to check email, and there it was, my message, now viral. Someone from the party had reposted it. No edits, no commentary. Just the attachments and a caption that read, "Sometimes silence isn't golden, it's paid for." I didn't comment, but I watched the views tick past 50,000 by morning. I didn't comment, I didn't share, I didn't even like the post. I just watched. By 8 a.m., the email I sent, attachments and all, had been reshared to a local Facebook group called Asheville Neighbors. By noon, it had 17,000 views. By dinner, it was being discussed on a regional parenting podcast, one I used to listen to when I still believed being the responsible daughter meant something. The screenshots of transfers, utilities, tuition checks, my name on every single line. The comment section turned into a courtroom. Strangers defending me, others sharing their own stories. One woman wrote, "This could be my sister. This could be me." Another, "She didn't disappear. They edited her out." By the following morning, a PR client issued a statement. We're ending our relationship with Astria Vale. We do not condone misrepresentation or the erasure of contribution. Astria's Instagram went dark that afternoon. The last post she left up was a quote over a sepia-toned photo of a wilted bouquet. Sometimes silence hurts more than words. I read it twice. It didn't sting. It didn't even land. It was what she always did. Make the wound poetic instead of apologizing for it. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives who hadn't acknowledged me in years. I'm sorry, I never knew. I should have asked more questions. One cousin, Anna, messaged, "Your mom's trying to say the screenshots were out of context, but come on, that bank trail is a novel." The pushback was real. For the first time, I wasn't just someone who walked away from a family. I was someone who had been walked over, and people saw it. And then came the video. A guest, someone I barely remembered, posted raw footage from the anniversary party, the full version, the one that hadn't been trimmed, re-edited, softened. At minute 12, it showed me walking toward my parents with a white envelope in hand. I placed it gently by my mother's seat. She nodded once, took the envelope, tucked it behind the centerpiece, and turned to the mic to toast Astria. That clip hit harder than any screenshot ever could. The internet didn't just see facts, it saw behavior. Soon after, a comment appeared under the video from someone anonymous, claiming they had worked with the videographer who edited the family montage. The instructions came directly from Astria. Cut anything with malice. Focus on family joy. Make it centered on connection, not complication. Narrative control, dressed up as curation. I didn't say a word, not in public, not in private, but my inbox was flooded with interview requests, podcast invites, quote opportunities. The kind of digital door knocking that only happens when your silence has made more noise than your voice ever did. Then came the call. It wasn't from family. It was a woman named Callie, freelance journalist, working on a long-form feature for a national outlet. She said she'd seen the thread, the video, the screenshots. "I think a lot of women will see themselves in you," she said. I was quiet. She continued. "Would you be willing to go on record? Because this isn't just your story. It's a pattern." I held the phone in my hand. The sunlight from the kitchen window cast my shadow against the fridge, taller somehow than I remembered it ever being. And for the first time, I considered saying yes, not to be seen, but to make sure others were. I didn't need to say yes. The world was already speaking for me. It started with a Facebook post. One of the guests from the party, someone I barely knew, shared a heartfelt letter. She called what happened to me one of the quietest betrayals I've ever witnessed. She ended with, "This wasn't just a missing name, it was a missing daughter." That post caught fire. Underneath, the comments piled in like sandbags breaking a dam. I know families like this. Mine too. She paid for their lives and they cut her from the photos? Good on her. Finally, someone showing what quiet strength really looks like. For the first time, the silence around me wasn't isolating. It was amplifying. I hadn't spoken publicly, but truth doesn't always need a microphone when the receipts speak louder. Messages started coming in, family friends, people who hadn't messaged me in years. My 6th grade English teacher wrote, "I always knew you were holding more than you showed." I'm proud of you, Melis. The next step came from Leora. She arrived at my apartment with a folder and a look that said, "It's time. We're locking everything," she said. "No more access. No more assuming they can use your name or your credit to float their lifestyle." I signed each page slowly. Legal freeze notices, revocation of co-ownership claims, notification to the property board regarding misuse of jointly held real estate. A courier delivered the last letter directly to my parents' mailbox. Unauthorized usage of a joint property for financial leverage is under review. Their silence now wasn't noble. It was panic. Meanwhile, Astria did what Astria always did. She spun. She posted a clarifying video about misunderstandings and media overreach. Her voice trembled just enough to appear authentic. She ended it with, "We all need grace, especially in families." It didn't land. The top comment under the video had over 6,000 likes. Pretty words don't erase paper trails. That afternoon, she shut off her comments. By morning, 3 clients had dropped her. Brand conflict, they said. We need alignment with integrity. I sat with Leora again to finalize the final stack of paperwork. This is the last piece, she said, tapping her pen. After this, they have no hold left. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Like a puzzle piece finally slid into place after years of being forced into the wrong edge. I signed. The pen didn't shake. Leora smiled. You've done more than most people ever managed to do. I walked out of the office just before noon. It was crisp outside, light wind, sun warm enough to not need a jacket. Across the street, parked beneath a drooping magnolia, was their car. Inside, behind the glass, was Seraphine. She didn't get out. Just watched me through the windshield like she was trying to figure out if I would walk over. I didn't. We locked eyes for maybe 10 seconds. No emotion on her face. Just the faint squint of someone who doesn't recognize what they created. I didn't wave. I didn't flinch. I just turned and drove into the version of my life where I no longer owed them anything. The days that followed were uneventful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No missed calls, no voicemails laced with guilt, no passive-aggressive texts, just stillness. I started waking up without a stomach full of dread. My calendar, once peppered with reminders to check on someone else's needs, was blank. The absence of obligation was disorienting at first, like walking into a room that had always been filled with noise, only to find it hushed, finally, by your own choosing. That peace held for 4 days. On the 5th evening, just as the sky dipped into the warm amber of dusk, the doorbell rang. I stood still for a moment, letting the sound echo through my hallway. When I opened the door, they were both there, Seraphine and Valora. They weren't dressed for show. No pressed blazers or costume jewelry. Seraphine wore the cardigan she usually reserved for church potlucks, and her eyes looked like she hadn't slept in 2 nights. Valora stayed quiet, staring at the porch railing like it held answers. "We miss you," Seraphine said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I don't think you realize what this has done," she added. "To us. To this family." Valora cleared his throat. "It got out of hand." I crossed my arms. "No, it didn't get out of hand. You handed it over." Seraphine's voice trembled. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." "But you meant what you said," I replied. "You meant the toast. You meant every second of silence that followed it. You meant every time you watched me hand you something and chose not to mention it." Neither of them spoke. You didn't just leave me out, I continued. You built a story where I never existed. Valora glanced at me. You're our daughter. And I was the one who kept the lights on while you gave Astria the spotlight, I said, the words even and firm. You told me not to make things public, but you made my absence the centerpiece of your narrative. Seraphine's lip quivered. You have no idea how hard it's been. I nodded slowly. You're right, because I've been too busy carrying it for all of you. They didn't interrupt. That at least was new. A moment passed. Seraphine lifted her hand slightly, almost a gesture of peace. Can we come in? I looked at them, really looked. No, I said. Not yet. I didn't shut the door on them. I didn't raise my voice or slam my heel into the floor for effect. I just stood still and waited for them to understand that silence wasn't absence. It was a line. And this time, I wasn't crossing it for them. I walked them down the steps, slow and quiet. No one reached for a hug. No one apologized. No one asked if there was still time to fix it. There was no anger left, just a quiet space where trust used to be. They got into their car and pulled away. I went back inside and closed the door behind me, and for the first time, it didn't feel like shutting them out. It felt like protecting what was finally mine. I turned toward the living room, and that's when I saw it. An envelope slid beneath the door. It wasn't theirs. I opened the envelope with the same hesitation I'd used for years, with my parents, with Astria, with the life I had lived on the margins. But this time, it wasn't dread that lingered in my fingers. It was curiosity. Inside was a folded printout. On it, an article titled, "The Daughter Who Disappeared, Until She Was Needed." I didn't need to read the byline to know who had written it. Elowen, the friend from high school who had quietly sat near the back at the party, watching, listening, seeing what so many pretended not to. Below the article was a handwritten note in her familiar looping script. Your silence taught louder than their applause ever could. I sat down on the couch and read the article word for word. Not because I needed validation, but because every paragraph felt like someone had finally seen the full painting, and not just the cropped version Astria had framed. Within hours of the article going live, it was shared across parenting blogs, family forums, and eventually picked up by a major lifestyle site. The comment section exploded with people from across the country. This is my sister. This is my daughter. This is me. I turned down most of the interview requests. I didn't want to make a spectacle out of pain. But one podcast caught my attention, hosted by a therapist who specialized in family estrangement and generational dysfunction. It wasn't for clicks. It was for clarity. I said yes. Astria didn't weather the storm. Screenshots surfaced showing her direct messages to the videographer with explicit instructions to remove me from the footage. Her charity invoices were exposed as staged. Sponsors withdrew. Her business license was flagged for review. The facade cracked, then collapsed. At church, my parents became an awkward topic. Someone anonymously mailed them copies of my financial logs, the same documents I'd once buried in desktop folders. Sunday invitations dried up. Even their bridge club quietly replaced them. But I wasn't watching all of that with vengeance. I was watching with stillness, because I was doing something new. I sold the property I had once co-owned but never set foot in, the same home they'd used to build their legacy while keeping my name off the mailbox. With part of the proceeds, I made a donation. Not in secret this time. I gave it publicly to a foundation that supports adult children financially manipulated by family members. I used my full name. In the podcast, the host asked me, "Why now? Why come forward after so much time?" I answered simply, "If they erased me, I'll write myself where they can't white it out." The message lit a fire. Thousands downloaded that episode within days. A week later, I got a message from Seraphine. "Can we talk?" I wrote back, "I forgive you, but I'm not coming back, because I'm finally where I belong, not behind, not beside, but beyond you." And I meant it. On a cool Tuesday morning, I walked into a community center off a quiet street. I was there to teach a class on financial literacy. The room wasn't big, just a dozen people, most of them older women looking to understand how to budget without leaning on children they didn't want to burden. In the back, a woman raised her hand and asked, "How did you learn all this?" I smiled, not out of pride, but with something deeper. By paying attention to who never paid me back. After class, I gathered my notes, turned off the lights, and stepped outside. The air felt cleaner, lighter. Sometimes you reclaim your place not by being invited in, but by building a door no one else can close.